Well, as we said, big questions as a result of that decision in Geneva. Now, joining me to take this discussion forward in the Delhi studios, we have Biraj Patnaik with us, who's been an advisor on the Supreme Court Commissioner's Office for the Right to Food. We're also being joined from the BJP by the spokesperson Nalin Kohli and the spokesperson of the Congress, Salman Soz, with us. Gurcharan Das, the author of India Grows at Night, who is joining us as well. And to get a view from the world of diplomats, KC Singh, former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. I want to actually take this to Nalin Kohli first. Nalin Kohli, the BJP sort of taking a populist step by staying away from this agreement at the WTO?
Well, this issue came up earlier when the talk of the peace clause was there. I think we need to look at it in perspective. 25% of the global hungry people are in India. Number two is that this is a country where food subsidy is really part of, reaching out to the most deprived sections of the country. And it's a reality. Three, in terms of Europe and in terms of the USA, over $1 billion a day is the subsidy that goes into agriculture there. So I don't know how far this can be about an image. It has to be about real solutions for people who are hungry. So we really have to find something that works around it. Now the details are going to be there in the WTO, right. But I don't buy this line of argument that's being taken that, what we heard in your report is that, it's a matter of credibility. I mean, the United States, for example, in a few years ago in a report in probably the International Herald Tribune, right, said that 27 times more is the electricity consumption by a person in the US as compared to India. Okay. So I mean, the scales are different. We need to understand that there is a world that isn't exactly like the developed world out there.
Okay, right. The scales are different. We need to understand. KC Singh, you've been a diplomat. You've engaged in these forums for the bulk of your professional life. Could this have been handled differently? India had, after all, in December, given an assurance that they would ink the deal.
It's not clear why suddenly NDA have taken this rather harsh stand, because I believe the UPA government had consulted with them when they were taking a stand there, because there was unanimity on both sides of the house that it was important to have food security and to continue with the and that the Food Security Act itself had sanctity. I think there was no disagreement in the House or amongst the political class. Therefore, what is sudden is that the peace clause which had been worked out, which would have given us time till 2017, now what NDA is saying is that that is not good enough. And to do that 4 days or 5 days before the agreement deadline, when it has to be signed and finalized, would be taken amiss by a number of countries, because we found in BRICS also, all that they said was there should be food security and stock holding, but they didn't go beyond that, because Brazil, China and perhaps other than South Africa, even within the BRICS, they may not support us on this, or they may have a slightly different stand. So India would find that it may have support in the developing world, but it would find many of its friends in the West very disappointed.
Okay, all right. KC Singh, finding its friends in the West disappointed, India is trying to make an impact on the global stage as well. You're referring also to the issue of continuity when governments hand over one party to another across the world where foreign policy is concerned. Gurcharan Das, I want to ask you, do you think India did right by making its position clear on staying away from this trade facilitation agreement right now?
I think India did wrong. This is very disappointing. I had thought that the BJP government was supposed to be a business-friendly government. And it sounds either this is a bureaucratic capture of some kind, as it happened in the budget. But I personally think that trade facilitation is something very different. And why is India linking it up? I know they're doing it as a bargaining chip, but trade facilitation is about getting rid of red tape, making it easier, harmonizing the rules of trade in each country, customs rules, etc. And frankly, it's against India's national self-interest. We forget that we are also an exporter. We were, in the last 2 years, we've exported 40 million tons of rice and wheat, and making us the second largest in the world. Why should we always look at ourselves as the poor starving country.
Okay.
We are a rising country.
Right.
And we need as much trade facilitation as anything. And frankly, food security is a totally different thing that doesn't concern this. We have linked this up.
Right.
And we could separately, I mean, forget, we are not discussing the food security bill.
Right.
But we should have separately
so you're saying basically
dealt with the
two
problem.
issues.
And so what has happened in the end? What's happened is that India is about to get isolated. We have got the image of being a spoiler.
Right.
And frankly, we should be supporting WTO.
Okay.
Because the WTO is in very, very fragile condition. America is about to create pacts within the Atlantic and the Pacific.
Right.
We're going to get isolated, and it's in our favor to be favor of multilateral trade.
Voicing that view about the sense of isolation that India might create around it, and saying we should have separated trade facilitation from food security. Nalin Kohli, I know you want to make a point, but before I get you in, Biraj Patnaik also wants to get in on this debate, so we'll get Biraj in right now.
I think it's on a rare occasion today that I completely agree with Nalin Kohli. I don't agree with most things that this BJP government does or the BJP does, but on this I think we are correcting a mistake that we made at Bali. Hats off to this government, and I hope they don't do a UPA on us by turning around at the last minute like they did at Bali and signing on and inking the deal. I mean, to Gurcharan Das's comment that why did we link the two? We did not link trade facilitation and the food security clause. Trade facilitation was a Singapore round issue. Food security was a Doha development round. Bali was a continuation of the Doha development round. It was the Americans who linked the two to arm twist India and the developing world by linking the LDC package and trade facilitation together. Second, the gains of trade facilitation are hugely exaggerated. The $1 trillion figure that the Americans are throwing around has no basis at all, because it doesn't take into account the costs that developing countries have to bear to ensure trade facilitation. It means computerizing, it means creating infrastructure at ports, it means putting in systems. That's more than the benefits that developing countries would get. Second, this 20 million jobs, again a figure that the Americans are throwing around, that this is going to create 20 million jobs. It's not, because a lot of jobs are going to be lost when you have multilateral trade of that kind coming in. So this is benefiting a few American companies for which we are supposed to forsake our food security.
Right, Biraj Patnaik, before I want to just get quickly Salman Soz in on that. Salman Soz, you're hearing the criticism both from Nalin Kohli and the BJP, of course, but also from Biraj Patnaik, who's worked on right to food. That was also something your government was deeply committed to before it lost power. The act was passed. Why then did the UPA deem it all right to actually agree to this in principle in Bali? That's the question, I think, because that's what's led to this confusion right now.
You know, compared to where we are right now, I think most commentators here and abroad were basically saying that India stepped onto the global stage by getting the Bali deal done. Number one, trade facilitation is good for India, is good for the world trade. More trade is good for us. We cannot hide behind barriers, and we must be progressive in our outlook, and that is what we've tried to accomplish. I do not accept Mr. Patnaik's view that this is going to impose additional costs on us because we have to, by the way, set up all this infrastructure and all this, computerization. Of course, we have to do that anyway. We have to, because we must modernize our customs and associated areas. And in that, I do agree with Mr. Gurcharan Das that this is, we need to reform, we need to modernize, and one would have hoped that the BJP would actually use, all the rhetoric that they've kind of employed during the election process about reforms, they would follow up on that. Second, Food Security Act, which was brought by the Congress and the UPA, was actually protected under the Bali deal. Why? Because unlike, the Americans wanted a sunset clause after 4 years. That, that was the agreement that the Americans proposed. But what India said was there will be no sunset clause. The countries and the WTO would work on protecting the interests of farmers, especially because, and not just farmers, but also the people who benefit from the Food Security Act. on both counts, on 3 counts, India was doing really well. But
Okay,
right now,
all right,
we are isolated. I don't think we're going to get much.
All right,
let me finish.
Yeah, very quickly.
I don't think we're going to get, I don't believe we're going to get much. There'll be some assurances thrown at us, and that's about it.
Okay.
Right now, Venezuela and Cuba are supporting us. That's it. Maybe one other country.
Right. Okay. So let me actually get Nalin Kohli back in on this. Nalin Kohli, Salman was also making that point. It's really, we're in a club of Venezuela, Cuba and Argentina right now, today, as far as this trade facilitation agreement is concerned. Surely there was a different way to handle this, considering there had been a commitment, whether it was a different political party or your own. It was the Indian government that had made a commitment in December. Was there another way of actually pushing forward India's interests rather than in this dramatic walking away from the trade facilitation agreement?
Well, I'm going to try to put it in perspective, and you'll have to just bear me out for a few minutes. Ambassador K.C. Singh, first to correct him, we had opposed what had happened with the UPA. There was no unanimity. Number 2 is, I'm a little surprised that Mr. Gurcharan Das is mixing the WTO and trade facilitation issue with the issue here. Let's understand it in perspective. What are we saying? We are saying essentially that subsidy on agriculture, which is given through minimum support price, is the issue at hand here. It's not the food security bill, which is a delivery mechanism. It's about talking of the rice and this about reaching out to them. Now the question here is, the doubt that was created in the developed world is whether we would be dumping this rice or this wheat into the international market, which India doesn't have a history of. We have never dumped rice or wheat. We've sold it or exported. One minute. Let me just finish my point.
Let him come in. We'll come back to you, Nalin. Just a second.
I'm sure Mr. Das can add to it.
We'll just come back to you. Let Gurcharan Das respond.
So therefore, we have never dumped. We have never dumped.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Das, go ahead. I can see you shaking your head.
Yeah. Listen, the fact of the matter is that what this shows, why have we linked these two issues? They are completely different issues. And that's why we are getting a bad name and becoming the biggest spoiler in the world trading system. This goes against the fundamental belief that Narendra Modi for the last year and a half has been campaigning and selling us this idea that trade is good and free trade is even better. And now what this government is doing is has isolated us. I mean, when we should be looking outward, this has got nothing to do with food security.
That is an emotional
talk about food security. It's got to do with harmonizing. It's trade facilitation.
We are going off the
I need to come in. No, hold on, Maya. No, hold on. Maya, you're talking about the BJP and the BJP government.
No, Nalin, once again.
Let me finish my point, because we are going into the area.
Yeah, Biraj Patnaik actually agreeing with you here. Biraj Patnaik agreeing with you here and saying that...
Let me say this. Let me say this very clearly. I was at Bali, and ambassador upon ambassador came to us and told us that they felt very let down by the way that India led the G33 up the garden path with a proposal, and then led the entire developing countries down at the last minute. So therefore, we stand isolated because of our past behavior in Bali. Second, look, we did not link this deal. It was the Americans who brought trade facilitation onto the table. And the last point that I want to really make is that, look, I mean,
I have not finished my point through the debate yet.
The deal at Bali is only for one part, which is the agreement on agriculture. It is not on the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. And if the developed world had to show an instrument of faith, why did Canada, Pakistan and the US take us to the Committee on Agriculture on data sharing? I mean, they shouldn't have done that.
In fact, K.C. Singh, can you just come in on this and the way that our diplomats have handled this? Because there seem to be so many gaps in everybody's comprehension of exactly how things have transpired between Doha and today, in fact, on this.
You see, what's happening is the Doha Round had been revived because two things were happening in the world. The world is moving towards special trade agreements, trans-Pacific, transatlantic. ASEAN is doing it. China is entering into it. So on the one side, you have special agreements. On the other side, WTO credo was that you have free trade, you liberalize trade. Now, the two things are happening at the same time.
But Ambassador
so I think they brought a smaller agenda in because there's a much bigger agenda.
Ambassador Singh, the West has also been accused, both the European Union and the US has been accused of actually promoting massive subsidies domestically for their own farmers and their own people and protecting their own interests. And
let me just explain. Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Absolutely correct. Now, what they do is they are objecting to subsidies. They are not objecting to cash reimbursement. And therefore, in the 4 years, theoretically it is possible, or it was possible. That is why the Aadhaar card, even this government and the previous one, have talked of cash reimbursement.
Okay.
Now, do you do both to the producer and the supplier? Do you subsidize it, or do you do a cash transfer?
Okay.
Now, the difference is only that. It's a question of how you do it. But why NDA has decided to do it last minute, they may be right, but it's going to create a very bad impression as far as Mr. Modi's image as a free trader, as open pro-business. Well, that will be affected.
Okay, Nalin Kohli, quickly. Nalin Kohli, come in on that, quickly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me just say two things. There is a matter of looking at things through the perspective of business and through the perspective of survival. When it talks about the world's 25% poor people who live in our country, survival will take precedence over business. You can't have business over
great nations do both.
Day after
great
day.
nations do
Second
both.
Is in terms of Ambassador Singh, what he says, why are we, no, hold on. Why are we doing what we call as a U-turn? Or in that sense, we opposed what happened earlier. We've come into government just 60 days ago. And we are in our rights in terms of it, looking at it, because after all, ahead in our tenure, I'll give it to you on stamped paper. If it is not going to be in the interest of the farmers, Mr. Sos can pontificate as much as he wants on free trade. His party will be the first one on the block to say we sold out the interests of our poor.
Okay, Salman Sos wants to come in on that. All right, Nalin Kohli, Salman Sos wants to come in on that. Go ahead, Salman.
I think, frankly, perhaps Nalan should do a bit more research on this area because this is a complicated area. What the UPA did, what Mr. Anand Sharma did as Commerce Minister, that was a big victory not just for India, but for many, many developing countries who have a lot of poor people. Now, as far as subsidies are concerned, there's a 4-year period in which there'll be no kind of punitive action against India or any other country that subsidizes its agricultural sector. But if there is no agreement, there is no sunset clause. If there is no agreement, that doesn't mean the subsidies have to end.
No.
Okay.
So they have to get agreement on that. So they did. This was a big victory. On the other hand, by the way, trade is something that we can all agree is extremely important for India. India is not going to be a modern country if we don't promote trade.
Yeah, trade is important. Trade is important, of course. Salman Sos, just a moment. Biraj Patnaik, come in and make your point.
And our reputation is important. We have become a global leader.
I don't think. Look, I don't think Salman Sos has got his facts right. Please read the Bali Declaration. 3 points. One, it clearly says that irrespective of what is contained in the agreement, if any country
Sorry, what? I didn't hear that.
Sorry, if you read the Bali Agreement, and I request you to do that.
Yes, I have read it.
It says very clearly that firstly, it only covers the agreement on agriculture. It does not cover the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures, where we can be dragged to the settlement mechanism.
Right. And the agreement is that there will be no countervailing measures.
No. 1 second. Second, it clearly says that if a country considers India's procurement to be anti-trade, it can take. So my last word would be, no deal is better than a bad deal. The government's doing right. We should celebrate this and support them.
All right. Nalin Kohli, very quickly, come in and make your last point. Very quickly.
One last comment only. If the Congress party was so interested in reputation, we wouldn't have had the retrospective tax.
Okay.
So don't give us this thing about this. We are talking about
this is more like retrospective.
All right, gentlemen.
This is what the BJP is giving to this country and to the world. A retrospective act, basically. This is what the BJP is doing.
All right, gentlemen. We'll have to agree to leave it at that right now, because at the end of the day, while both imperatives, as KC Singh was also saying, that a great country needs both things to work in tandem. Is there any way to move forward? Because India's international image is also important. India's food security is also important. And of course, there is no question of allowing one group of nations to get away with what they will not let the other group of nations do on the world stage. So we're going to go around in circles as far as the WTO is concerned. We've done that for the last decade. I think it's going to continue for many years to come. Thank you all very much for joining us. We're completely out of time because we want to end tonight's bulletin actually by also paying tribute to some fallen men. Now, India's fallen soldiers at Kargil, 15 years after the end of the Kargil war. The Defence Minister Arun Jaitley also paid homage to the fallen soldier at India Gate. We leave you with these images. Goodbye.